just when Luca thought he had buried his pain. Just when Helen began to melt the ice around his heart. The past returns, not as a memory, not as a feeling, but as something real, something he can no longer ignore. The man who feared love is now faced with something even more dangerous, losing it again. Helen came into his life as a mission, but now she's becoming something much deeper, something he didn't plan for, something he can't control. And when secrets begin to unfold, when truths long hidden start coming to light. In Part 3, one question remains. Will Luca run back into the safety of his cold world, or will he finally fight for the love he never believed in? Get ready for deeper emotions, shocking revelations, intense drama, and a love story that will test every boundary. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful, emotional, and inspiring stories. The Adewale mansion was alive in a way it hadn't been in years. Not with parties or clubs, not with business deals or security alarms. It was alive with tension, laughter, and something neither Luca nor Helen could fully name. Morning, the battle of habits. Helen woke up early as usual. By 6 o'clock a.m., she was already preparing breakfast, humming a tune, her movements confident yet careful in the grand kitchen. Luca walked in shortly after, dressed casually but looking as sharp as ever. Again, he asked, arms crossed, frowning at the aroma of fried eggs, bread, and roasted tomatoes. Helen glanced at him, not missing a beat. Yes, again, breakfast is important. He narrowed his eyes. You cook breakfast every day? Yes, human beings need food, even billionaires. Luca smirked, shaking his head slightly. You're fearless, I'll give you that. Helen grinned. And you're predictable, I'll take that too. Mrs. Adewale, observing from a distance with a cup of tea, shook her head with amusement. Fire meets fire, she whispered. This is exactly what I wanted. The first challenge. Later that day, Luca had a meeting scheduled with an important client. Helen, curious, followed him upstairs. Wait, Luca said, stopping abruptly. Why are you following me? Helen shrugged casually. I want to see how a billionaire works under pressure. He stared at her like she had grown another head. You're insane. Helen tilted her head. Maybe, or maybe I'm just brave. Luca rolled his eyes but didn't stop her. He simply shook his head and muttered, Brace yourself. This is business, not fun. Inside his office, Luca became the perfect picture of power and composure. Clients entered, contracts were discussed, deals were sealed. But Helen, she noticed the small things. The way Luca's fingers tapped lightly when he was deep in thought. The way his eyes softened slightly when he listened carefully to a junior colleague's opinion. When the client left, Luca closed his laptop and turned around, expecting silence or an annoyed Helen. Instead, she smirked. You're different than I thought, she said casually. He raised an eyebrow. Different how? You're not just pride and arrogance. You're human. For a moment, Luca didn't respond. The words lingered in the room like a whispered secret. An unexpected moment. Later in the evening, a minor power outage hit the mansion. The lights went out, plunging the rooms into soft darkness. Helen didn't panic. She moved confidently toward the large windows. Luca, however, immediately checked the backup generator. Relax, I've got this, he said, flipping a switch. Lights flickered on. Helen laughed softly. You're prepared for everything, huh? Luca glanced at her, a small smirk forming. And you seem unbothered. Helen tilted her head. I've learned to adapt. Besides, I don't need lights to see you clearly. The words hung in the air, heavier than either expected. Luca's heart skipped a beat, though he would never admit it. Sparks in conversation. Later that night, they found themselves alone in the library. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and old books. Luca sat in a leather chair. Helen perched on the armrest of another chair, a notebook in her lap. So, why are you here again? Luca asked, half teasing, half serious. To remind you that not everyone is fake, Helen replied softly. Luca shook his head. You're impossible. Helen smirked. And yet you're listening. A quiet that was not awkward, but charged. Then Luca leaned back, exhaling slowly. You're different. I don't like it. Helen laughed lightly. That's the point. And for the first time, Luca didn't argue. He just watched her. The realization. That night, as Luca stared out the floor-to-ceiling window, he realized something he hadn't admitted in years. Helen was changing him. Her presence, her courage, her honesty. She didn't need anything from him. She wasn't intimidated by him. She was free. And for the first time in a long while, he wanted to be free too. Free to feel, free to care, free to love. Meanwhile, Helen lay in her room, staring at the ceiling, a small smile on her face. This man, she whispered to herself. He's hard, stubborn, but there's something underneath all that arrogance. And somewhere deep inside, she knew. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Luca stood alone on the balcony of his room, a glass of drink in his hand, staring out at the city lights of Lagos. Cars moved like tiny stars on the road below, but his mind was far away from everything in front of him. It had been days since Helen came into his life, and somehow, she had done what no one else could do. She had unsettled him. A memory he couldn't escape. He closed his eyes briefly, and just like that, she came back. Not Helen, the one before her, the girl who had once owned his heart completely. Her laughter, her voice, the way she used to call his name, soft, teasing, full of life. Luca, you worry too much. His grip tightened around the glass. Stop. But the memory didn't listen. It never did. Flashback, love before the storm. Years ago, Luca wasn't like this. He used to laugh easily, trust freely, love without fear. She had been everything, not because of his money, not because of his name, but because she saw him, the real Luca. They had plans, dreams, a future that felt certain, until the day everything changed. Rain, hospitals, voices shouting, doctors rushing, the smell of antiseptic and fear. Luca sat outside the emergency room, his hands trembling. Doctor, please, she'll be fine, right? No answer, just silence. Then finally, I'm sorry. Those two words shattered everything. Back to the present. Luca opened his eyes sharply. His chest rose and fell heavily. No one stays, he muttered. No one. That belief had protected him, built walls around him, kept him safe from ever feeling that pain again. Until Helen. The interruption. A knock came on his door. He frowned. Who is it? It's me, Helen. He hesitated. Then, come in. The door opened slowly. Helen stepped in, her expression softer than usual, less playful, more observant. I saw you outside, she said quietly. You looked like someone fighting ghosts. Luca scoffed lightly. You started analyzing me now? Helen shrugged. You're not as hard to read as you think. He turned away. I'm fine. She didn't move. No, you're not. Silence, the first real conversation. Helen walked closer, not too close, just enough. You don't hate love, she said softly. Luca let out a dry laugh. You don't know what I hate. I know pain when I see it, she replied. That hit, harder than he expected. He turned slowly to face her. What do you want, Helen? She held his gaze. The truth. He shook his head. You can't handle it. Try me. Walls begin to crack. Luca stared at her for a long moment. Something in her eyes, steady, unafraid, patient. He exhaled slowly. Then for the first time, he spoke. I love someone, he said quietly. Helen didn't interrupt. She wasn't like the others. She didn't care about money. She didn't care about status. His voice dropped slightly. She just cared about me. Helen listened, her expression soft. What happened? She asked gently. Luca looked away. She died. Silence filled the room instantly. Helen's breath caught slightly. I'm sorry, she whispered. The truth behind the arrogance. Luca laughed bitterly. After that, everything changed. He ran a hand through his hair. People started coming into my life, smiling, pretending, wanting something. His eyes hardened. So I decided, no more. Helen nodded slowly. So you built walls. I built protection. You built a prison, she corrected softly. That made him pause. A dangerous question. Do you think she would be happy seeing you like this? Luca's eyes snapped to hers. That's not your place. Maybe not, Helen said calmly, but someone has to say it. Silence. Then, she loved you, Helen continued. The real you, not this version hiding behind pride. Luca didn't respond, because deep down, he knew she was right. A moment that changed everything. Helen sighed softly. I'm not here to replace her. Luca looked at her. I can't be her, she continued, and I won't try to be. She paused. But I can show you that love didn't die with her. That line, it hit differently. Luca felt something shift again. Deeper this time. More real, more dangerous. The beginning of vulnerability. For the first time in years, Luca didn't have a comeback, didn't have sarcasm, didn't have defense. He just stood there, looking at her, seeing her, not as a stranger, not as an intruder, but as someone who understood him. A quiet ending. Helen turned toward the door. I'll leave you to rest, she said softly. Then she paused. Without turning back, you're not broken, Luca. And just like that, she left. A heart that started to feel again. Luca stood alone in the room, but something was different. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt thoughtful, alive. He looked out the window again, then whispered, maybe. Because for the first time, he wasn't completely sure he was right. And that was the beginning of everything. The morning started like every other. Quiet, controlled, predictable. But beneath that calm, something was already shifting. A different kind of silence. Luca sat at the dining table, staring at his untouched coffee. Normally, he would already be halfway through his schedule. Calls, meetings, decisions. But today, he wasn't moving. Helen walked in, tying her hair into a loose bun, humming softly. She stopped when she saw him. Good morning, she said. No response. She frowned slightly. Luca? He blinked, like he had just returned from somewhere far away. Morning. Helen walked closer. You didn't sleep? I did. You're lying. I'm not. She crossed her arms. You're a terrible liar. A pause. Then Luca sighed. I'm just tired. Helen studied him carefully, but before she could say anything else, his phone rang. The name he never expected. Luca glanced at the screen and froze, completely. His expression changed instantly. The calm disappeared, replaced by something else, something sharp, something shaken. Helen noticed. Who is it? She asked quietly. Luca didn't answer. He just stared at the phone like it was about to explode. The name on the screen, Dr. Williams. A voice from the past. Slowly Luca stood up, walked away from the dining area. Helen watched him go, her curiosity rising. Something wasn't right. Not at all. Luca stepped into his study and shut the door. For a few seconds, he just stared at the phone. Then finally, he answered. Hello? The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Mr. Adewale. Luca's grip tightened. It's been a while, the doctor continued. Luca's jaw clenched. Why are you calling me? A pause. Then, there's something you need to know. His heart skipped. I'm not interested. Sir, it's about her. Silence. Dead silence. Luca's world stopped. Don't, he said quietly, but the doctor continued anyway. You need to come to the hospital. Shock that cuts deep. Luca let out a bitter laugh. No, whatever this is, I don't want it. Mr. Adewale, I said no, he snapped. Silence. Then the doctor's voice softened. She might not be dead. Everything broke. A mind in chaos. Luca's hand trembled. The phone almost slipped from his grip. What did you just say? We made a mistake back then, the doctor said carefully. There are details you were never told. Luca's breathing became uneven. That's not possible, he whispered. You need to come in. Please. The line went quiet, but Luca didn't hang up. because his world had just turned upside down. Outside the door, Helen stood near the study, unable to ignore the tension. She hadn't meant to listen, but Luca's raised voice had pulled her in. I said no. That wasn't the Luca she knew. This was different. Raw, uncontrolled. She stepped closer, just as the door opened suddenly. Face to face with the storm, Luca stepped out, and Helen froze. His face was completely different. No arrogance, no control, just shock, fear, and confusion. Luca, what happened? She asked softly. He stared at her, like he didn't even see her at first. Then finally, they lied to me. Helen frowned. Who? His voice dropped. The hospital. Her heart skipped. About what? A long pause. Then, the woman I loved. He swallowed hard. Might be alive. A dangerous twist. Silence filled the space between them. Helen's chest tightened. Alive? After everything? After all the pain he carried? She didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to feel. But one thing was certain. Everything had just changed. The beginning of a storm. Luca ran his hand through his hair, pacing. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. I was there. I saw. He stopped, doubt creeping in. What if, he whispered. Helen watched him carefully. This wasn't just news. This was a storm. And storms don't come quietly. She stepped closer. Are you going to see her? She asked gently. Luca didn't answer immediately, because the question wasn't simple. If he goes, everything changes. If he doesn't, he may never know the truth. Finally, he looked at Helen, and for the first time, there was fear in his eyes. I don't know, he admitted. A heart caught between two worlds. Helen forced a small smile. You should go. The words hurt more than she expected, but she meant them. Because love, real love, wasn't selfish, even when it hurt. Luca stared at her. You're okay with that? Helen nodded slowly. It's your past, she said. You deserve the truth. But deep inside, her heart whispered something else. What if the truth takes him away from you? The cliffhanger. Luca grabbed his car keys, his mind racing, his heart torn. As he walked toward the door, he paused briefly, without turning. This changes nothing, he said. But even he didn't believe that. Because somewhere between the past and the present, between memory and reality, between loss and hope, Luca was about to face the one thing he feared most. The engine roared to life. Luca didn't wait, didn't think, didn't breathe. He just drove. The drive that felt endless. Lagos traffic had never felt this slow. Every red light was an insult. Every car in front of him felt like an obstacle standing between him and the truth. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. She might be alive. The words echoed in his head over and over again. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. He had been there. He had seen her. He had heard the doctor say, I'm sorry. So how? How was this even possible? Meanwhile, at the mansion, Helen stood by the window, watching as Luca's car disappeared through the gates. Her chest felt tight, heavy, unfamiliar. She wrapped her arms around herself. Why do I feel like this? She whispered. She already knew the answer, but she didn't want to say it out loud. Mrs. Adewale walked in quietly. You let him go, she said. Helen nodded. I had to. Mrs. Adewale studied her. And you're okay? Helen forced a small smile. I said I would help him, not hold him back. But her eyes said something else, something softer, something more vulnerable. The Hospital of Truth. Luca arrived at the hospital, the same one, the same building that had taken everything from him years ago. He stepped out of the car slowly this time. The confidence, gone, replaced by something unfamiliar. Fear, real fear. As he walked through the hospital doors, memories rushed back like a flood. The smell, the sound, the coldness of the walls. His chest tightened. Sir? A nurse's voice pulled him back. Can I help you? Luca swallowed. I'm here to see Dr. Williams. Face to face with the past. Moments later, Luca stood inside the doctor's office. Dr. Williams looked older, more serious, more cautious. "Mr. Adewale," he said. Luca didn't sit. "Start talking. No greetings, no patience, just truth." The doctor exhaled slowly. "What I'm about to tell you should have been told a long time ago." Luca's jaw tightened. "Then why wasn't it?" "Because we weren't sure," the doctor replied. "And by the time we had clarity, you were already gone." "That's not good enough," Luca snapped. "I know," the doctor said quietly. "The truth unfolds." "There was an error," he continued. "An error?" Luca repeated. "In the chaos of that night, records were mixed up. The patient you believed was her," he paused, "was not her." Silence. Complete silence. Luca blinked slowly. "That's impossible." "We confirmed it later," the doctor said. "But by then, things had changed." "What things?" Luca demanded. The doctor hesitated. "Then, she survived." A heart in shock. The words hit like a thunderstorm. "She's alive," the doctor added. Luca stepped back slightly. His mind refused to process it. Alive? After all these years? After all the pain? After everything he built his life around? "Where is she?" Luca asked, his voice low. The doctor looked at him carefully. "She's here." Luca's heart stopped. "Here?" "She's been under care, recovering." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Luca's voice rose. "Because she asked us not to." That stopped him completely. "What?" "A truth that cuts deeper." "When she regained consciousness," the doctor explained, "her memory was unstable. But one thing she was certain about." He paused. "She didn't want to see you." Silence. Heavy. Painful. Luca laughed bitterly. "Of course. The door to the unknown." The doctor stood up slowly. "She's stronger now," he said. "And she's agreed to see you." Luca's heart pounded. Every step suddenly felt heavy, important, final. "Room 217, the doctor said. The walk that changed everything. The corridor felt longer than usual. Each step echoed, each second stretched. Luca stopped in front of the door. "Room 217. His hand hovered over the handle. For the first time in years, he hesitated. What if she's really there? What if she's not the same? What if this changes everything? Back at the mansion, Helen sat quietly in her room, her phone in her hand. But she wasn't using it. Her mind was elsewhere, with him. She sighed. If she's really alive, her voice trailed off. She didn't finish the sentence, because she didn't need to. The moment before the truth. Back at the hospital, Luca finally pushed the door open, slowly, carefully, his heart racing louder than ever. And there, on the hospital bed, was a woman. He froze, because in that moment, the past and the present collided. Cliffhanger. Was it really her? Or had fate played another cruel trick? And if it was her, what would that mean for Helen, for Luca, for everything that was just beginning to grow? The door creaked open slowly. Luca stepped in, and everything stopped. A face from the past. She was there, lying quietly on the hospital bed, breathing, alive, real, not a memory, not a dream, not a ghost from his past. Her hair was shorter now, resting gently against her face. Her skin looked softer, a little pale, but still familiar, too familiar. Luca's heart pounded wildly. "No," he whispered. His legs felt weak. This can't be real. The first movement. As if she heard him, her fingers twitched. Luca froze. His breath caught in his throat. Slowly, her eyes opened. The moment that broke time. Their eyes met. And in that single moment, years disappeared. Pain resurfaced. Love returned. Confusion exploded. She blinked slowly, trying to focus. Then softly, "Luca?" Her voice. The same voice, weaker, but unmistakable. A heart that didn't know what to feel. Luca staggered back slightly. It was her. It was truly her. The woman he had mourned. A woman he had buried in his heart. The reason he stopped believing in love. Alive, right in front of him. "You're," his voice cracked. You're alive. She tried to sit up slightly, wincing. I thought you'd never come, she said gently. That hit deep. Luca shook his head. They told me you were dead. She looked down briefly. I know. The truth between them. Silence filled the room. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with everything unsaid. Why? Luca finally asked. His voice was calm, too calm. Why didn't you find me? Why didn't you tell me? She swallowed. It wasn't that simple. It never is, Luca replied sharply. She looked at him again. I lost my memory for a long time, she said softly. When I finally started remembering things, it was too late. Too late for what? For us, she whispered. A pain Luca didn't expect. Luca laughed bitterly. That's your reason? Her eyes filled slightly. No, that's not all. He stepped closer now, demanding, needing answers. Then what else? The shocking reveal. She hesitated, like the truth itself was heavy. Then finally, I didn't come back because I was told you had moved on. Luca froze. What? They said you were living your life, she continued, that you didn't even come back after that night. His eyes darkened. That's a lie. I didn't know that, she replied quietly. The web of lies. Luca ran a hand through his hair, anger rising, confusion mixing with pain. Who told you that? He demanded. She shook her head slightly. I don't remember clearly. Everything was blurred. A dangerous reality. Luca stepped back. This wasn't just fate. This wasn't just coincidence. Something had happened. Something had kept them apart. And now he was standing between two worlds, the past and the present. Back at the mansion, Helen stood in Luca's room. She hadn't meant to come in, but something pulled her there. She looked around quietly. The space felt different now, more personal, more real. Her eyes landed on something on the table, a photo frame. She picked it up slowly and froze. It was Luca, smiling, happier than she had ever seen him, standing beside a woman, the same woman, now lying in that hospital bed. Helen's chest tightened. So, it's true, she whispered, a heart in conflict. Back at the hospital, Luca looked at her again, the woman he once loved, the woman he never forgot, the woman who had just returned to life. But something was different. Something inside him wasn't reacting the way he expected. Yes, he felt shock. Yes, he felt pain. But love? It wasn't rushing back the way he thought it would. And that scared him. The question that changed everything. She looked at him gently. Do you still love me? The room went silent. Luca didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, he didn't know. Cliffhanger. Because somewhere deep inside him, another face appeared. Helen. Her smile, her stubbornness, her kindness. And suddenly, the past wasn't the only thing pulling at his heart. Up next, will Luca choose the love he lost, or the love he's just beginning to feel? And what happens when Helen realizes she might be falling for a man who belongs to someone else? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional twists, drama, and unforgettable love stories.